gentlemen, welcome back to Tech Showdown. My name is Kevin. This is my co-host Eddie, and today we're checking out another gaming laptop. This time it's over by the guys at Asus, and it is the Asus ROG G752VT. So this is a 17.3 inch gaming laptop. Now, if you remember back, I checked out the G751. Oh, that was a good while ago, and it's actually quite a popular video of mine, so go check that out if you haven't. But yeah, so I was interested to try this guy out and see how it compared, and just see how it compared in general to all the other gaming laptops that we've been trying out lately, especially the Predator that I just checked out recently. So let's first start with the looks. So first thing you notice about it, it is quite striking. I mean, I'm glad they're all moving away from just the full matte black that we were seeing on just about everything. So that's really good. It's got a pretty intense silver and copper color scheme going for it. I quite like it. It makes it look really serious. And the back looks awesome. It has like light up lightsabers on the back, which is pretty cool. And it has this glass like clear plastic or something on the bottom. That looks really cool. You can see the heat pipes through it, so that was a nice thing to add in. I quite like that. It has a very, premium look to it, very aggressive look to it. However, that kind of goes both ways to me. The first is that it's, it can look awesome, and if you take it to I don't know, if you go to play games at your friend's house or something, they're going to be like, whoa, look at that thing. However, if you're going to be taking this to uni or work, it's going to look pretty hardcore pulling this out at, a lecture or a work meeting or something. So, yeah, it kind of goes both ways. But, I still think it's quite good. Design-wise, it is a bit slimmer than its predecessor. However, it is still quite heavy. It's coming in at 4 kilograms. So it has a bit of heft to it if you're going to be lugging this thing around all day. Now let's move on to the I/O and see what kind of connections it has. So if you look around the front, you'll see that it has absolutely nothing at all, which is pretty standard nowadays on all the gaming laptops we've been seeing. Over on the left-hand side, you see a card reader in the front there, a Blu-ray drive, which is a bit uncommon these days. You don't see that many optical drives anymore. 2 USB 3.0 ports and a secure lock or Kensington lock at the back. On the actual back side itself, all we see is 2 vents, big vents mind you. That's always good to see, but nothing in terms of I/O. And then around on the left hand side, starting from the back, we have the DC in, Ethernet jack, HDMI jack, mini display port, 2 more USB 3.0 ports including a USB charger port, a USB 3.1 Type-C port, which is nice to see, and then your standard line-in and headphone and microphone jacks. So all pretty standard there. I/O-wise, nothing too out of the ordinary. We're seeing the USB 3.1 a bit more now. I quite like that, and I think we're just going to see more of that in the future. Now let's move on to the specs. So I'll put them up on the screen for you now so you can have a gander there. And while you're reading through it, I just want to have a little bit of a rant. Well, not really a rant, just a talk. So if you haven't noticed, a lot of the laptops I've been testing lately have pretty much the exact same specs. They all got the Intel i7 6700HQ, which is a great processor, and the GTX 970M GPU from NVIDIA. Now this combo is, really solid. The gaming performance has always been really solid on these, spoiler alert. But it's just, they're all doing it now. There's the odd one that still has a 980M or even a desktop 980 now, but they're sort of at the very high end. But this sort of main class where people are buying a sort of high-end gaming laptop where they're not going too extreme, it's just the same thing. I just wish there was a bit more competition there and wish there was something a little bit different, because all of these are running the same things and they all have the exact same performance, which means my job as a laptop reviewer kind of gets simpler and harder at the same time. More simple in that they all seem to have similar performance, but harder because I have to tell you, which one to buy over another one, or which one's good and in what way, and it makes it a bit more difficult if they're all running pretty much the same specs. However, we will carry on regardless, and let's move on now to that screen. So it is a 17.3 inch 1080p or Full HD IPS display. Now, some models I think have G-Sync, because I was reading around the specs on them, and some say G-Sync and some don't. And this one I looked everywhere, and there's no G-Sync on this. I am like 99% sure. There's no stickers, there's nothing on the instructions, and I couldn't find anything in software, which leads me to believe there's no G-Sync. Unless they were doing the whole like, oh, it has G-Sync but only for an external monitor, which is I find really strange. But yeah, so some of these might have G-Sync. The one you might be looking at might have G-Sync, but this one I'm testing in particular does not seem to have G-Sync. However, let's move on. So display-wise, it's absolutely fantastic. This is an absolutely incredible display. Fantastic color reproduction. Very little in the way of backlight bleed, which is what I always like to see for movies and watching YouTube videos. It's awesome. Everything comes out really good, nice and clear. No real complaints there. Gaming-wise, no complaints either. Usually the shortcoming of an IPS display is response times, but I saw nothing in particular here that made me question that. It might not be as good as maybe a TN panel, but I didn't see anything while I was playing games on it that really upset me in terms of response time. So yeah, really solid display here. Good job, Asus. I really, really like this display on this laptop. Moving over now to the sound. So you get two speakers on the back behind the screen and also a subwoofer underneath, which gives really good bass. However, the default audio setup in Sonic Studio 2 is absolutely horrendous. I don't know why they set it as the default. It is so bad. The reverb is like through the roof. It sounds like you're in a cave, and just ruined the audio quality. At first, I just thought this had absolutely terrible audio. Maybe some reviewers who test this will probably think the same thing and not think to check Sonic Studio, sorry. But yeah, once you actually tune the audio, get it a bit more under control from those absolutely horrendous, like shockingly awful stock settings, you'll find it actually has, average, maybe below average audio quality. Nothing to really write home here. The fact that it has front-facing speakers, but they're kind of behind the screen, is a little bit of a letdown. It kind of gives you this strangish audio quality. I mean, it's okay, but yeah, I would just say it's probably a bit below average. Bass-wise, it kind of makes up for it, but still, it's just not really that good. Now let's talk about that keyboard then. So the keyboard's not by SteelSeries, which is something we see quite often these days. However, this one isn't. Which means, is that really a good thing or a bad thing? Well, in this particular case, it's still a really, really solid keyboard. It has nice travel, about 2.5 millimeters. It has a really good layout for the most part, pretty standard. The one main complaint I had with it was that it has this ROG button up where you would have the numlock key, and that caught me out a few times when I went to use the numpad and then they wouldn't work. So then I'd go to hit the numlock and oh, lo and behold, it's the ROG button, which brings up the ROG Gaming Center, which I wasn't a big fan of. However, that's a very small thing. It has macro keys on the top left, which are quite cool, and we'll talk about a little bit later, and all the normal brightness, keyboard brightness, all that's up on the F keys, the function keys. I usually like the main ones down on the arrow keys, but that's more a personal thing, so it shouldn't really matter too much. And overall, just a really nice, solid keyboard, great for typing and great for gaming. The touchpad, so the old roulette wheel spin of if the touchpad is really good or really awful. Which one is it going to land on? It's actually neither this time. Very surprising indeed. It's not good and it's not bad. It's just smack bang in the middle. It's just okay, or as I put in my script, meh. The accuracy in actually using the touchpad itself is okay, although I wish my finger would slide a little bit easier on it. It kind of feels a little strange, but it's okay. I mean, you hit what you need to hit, and that's alright. The clicking works, but it's got way too much treble. It kind of feels really strange. You always think treble's better because it gives you a better feel, but not in this case. It's just way too much. It just felt awful. Getting gestures work was also a pretty hit or miss. So overall, it's just okay. There's some areas where it's good, some areas where it's bad. So it's just okay. That's the best way I can put it. Moving over now to performance, and as I said earlier, with the pretty much identical specs to most of the things we've been testing lately in terms of gaming laptops, it's no surprise that it gets a similar result. So the first one I ran was Unigine Valley on the Extreme HD preset, and it scored 36.1 average frames per second, which is completely in line with everything else we've been testing lately. Next, I tried 3D Mark. This is a Fire Strike on 1080p, and it scored an average of 27.4 FPS, which is, again, very standard. Last one I tested was a game I've been playing a bit more lately, which is Dirt Rally. Really good looking game, and it scored 47.5 FPS average. So pretty good across the board there. What this basically means, and what I was doing, is that you can play all your games on very high, maxed out settings. If you're just wanting to be above 30 frames per second, which some people like to do. Obviously, this is with it plugged into the charger. But if you're wanting to be going over 60 frames per second, I would say probably drop down some of the filters on your 1080p games, and then you should be able to game just fine at over 60 frames per second. Let's now move on to the heat and noise. So heat-wise, it actually did really good. It was pretty low-ish as far as heat goes, as far as gaming laptops also go, because they always tend to run a bit hotter than things like your desktop PC, so always be aware of it. However, in the 3D Mark testing, the highest the CPU went up to was 79 degrees Celsius, and the GPU went up to 66 degrees Celsius, so very good there. 3D Mark stresses both the CPU and the GPU both individually and in a combined test, so those are very good scores there, and they would be in line with what you'd see when you were gaming with it. Noise-wise, it was very quiet. It did a really, really good job here. Low noise even when you're gaming, and when you're just browsing the web, it's just completely silent. Watching YouTube videos is going to be completely silent. So a really, really good job there as far as noise goes. Now, the battery life was very disappointing. This was probably the biggest letdown with this laptop. So it actually has a smaller battery than what you got in the G751, which I think is crazy. I really don't like this trend, which we're seeing with smartphones and with laptops, of making it thinner and sacrificing battery capacity. I would rather have it a bit fatter and have a bigger or the same battery as what it had before. So yeah, bit smaller of a battery, so that means with just casual use, browsing the web, doing all that sort of thing, this is just a general figure. You'll probably get 2 to 2.5 hours depending on what brightness you're running and depending what you're actually doing. With gaming, that's probably going to drop down to something like an hour. So yeah, not very good there at all in terms of battery life. However, the battery does charge up pretty quick, so that's the one kind of good thing about it, but still pretty terrible as far as battery life goes. Now, software wise, it's running Windows 10 as its operating system, like everything is now. And as far as included software, the only real good ones to mention is ROG Gaming Center, which is a complete rip-off of MSI's Dragon Gaming Center. So yeah, it just shows you, gives you a quick snippet of what your CPU temps are, GPU temps, all that kind of cool stuff. You can launch some applications from it and some fun stuff like that. The ROG macro key helps you set up your macros exactly how you want them to. And as we mentioned earlier, Sonic Studio 2 thankfully allows you to adjust the audio, because yeah, it would be a mess if they didn't include that, and you had to go and figure it out by yourself. Which brings us now to the conclusion, and what do I make of the G752? So looks-wise, I think it's really intense, but cool looking. I really like the look of it personally. I think this is a great looking laptop. It's going to be too hardcore for some people out there, but I don't mind it, and I'd rather have something that stands out from the crowd than something that's super minimalistic and nobody even looks at it twice. Display-wise, has an absolutely fantastic 17.3-inch IPS display. Really, really solid, and I have absolutely no complaints with it. Has pretty below-average sound quality, so just be aware of that if you're thinking about purchasing it and you're someone that requires really good audio quality. Has a really solid keyboard, nice layout, good key travel, nice tactile feel. It will paired with a pretty meh touchpad. I mean, they really should revise it and redesign it and just make it better in terms of accuracy, making gestures work, and also the clicking. A good all-round performance, which is what we've come to expect with the specs like this guy, and a lowish heat and a very, very low noise. So it does really solidly in both those areas. And it's also coming with below average battery life, which is another thing you're going to need to be aware of if you're thinking about purchasing one of these guys and you like something with a really good battery life, that you're not wanting to charge it every 2 to 2.5 hours of general use. So that means it pretty much does some things really well, and there are areas where it needs to improve. I still think it's a really solid laptop despite those shortcomings, but there definitely are better ones out on the market right now. So that's how I would basically conclude this review. It is still a good gaming laptop. I'm definitely not saying it's average, and I'm definitely not saying it's bad. It still is a good gaming laptop, but there are better ones out there. So definitely shop around, watch some other reviews, look at other things in the same price bracket as this guy first, and then make your decision. Now, I thank you all for watching this video. Please subscribe to Tech Showdown if you haven't already, and like the video. And as always, I'll see you guys next time. So it's going to depend on your taste. Screen-wise... Oh, goodness gracious. Wow, how embarrassing. Sorry you had to see that, Teddy.